Developing and mass-producing a warplane is a particularly complex and winding endeavor in itself, but during the Cold War, politics, bureaucracy, and budgetary restraints further muddled the process. Still, with aircraft design, the potential for failure lurks behind every corner. While Russia is known for its powerful fighter jets, such as the Su-35 and Su-57, the old Soviet Union had top-tier fighters that were tarnished with a questionable reputation decades ago. The MiG-23 was the Soviet response to American and European third-generation fighters, replacing the aging MiG-21. However, with a poor safety record, a mixed combat history, and an unfortunate flying reputation, many people, especially from the Western world, consider the MiG-23 as the Russian Air Force's worst fighter in history. Still, the nation stands by its Mach 2 capable aircraft with a groundbreaking design, long range, and nuclear weapon capability, giving it a side role that might have improved its performance. Flogger. In the early 1960s, the Mikoyan-Gurevich Design Bureau began the development of a successor to the iconic MiG-23 supersonic jet fighter and interceptor. While fast and agile, the old model was limited by its short range, limited weapons load, and primitive radar technology. The Design Bureau also had to consider a crucial demand from the Russian Air Force for the new aircraft: a much shorter takeoff run. As such, the Mikoyan team assessed the options of lift jets for an additional lift, and even the inclusion of unique variable geometry wings to change its physical configuration mid-flight. The result of the program became the Mikoyan-Gurevich MiG-23 fighter, with NATO codename Flogger. Initially intended as a response to the United States Air Force's McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II and the Republic F-105 Thunder Chief, the prototype made its maiden flight in 1967. Despite a basic long and tubular fuselage, a swept-back tail, a tapered belly fin under the rear section, and many other conventional components, the MiG-23 was more than meets the eye. One of its most noteworthy upgrades was a powerful radar housed in the nose in a conical assembly. The aircraft also carried a selection of guided weapons, complemented by infrared search and track system. With a 23mm Gryazev-Shipunov GST-23L autocannon capable of 260 rounds, the MiG-23 also had 6 hardpoints across its fuselage and wings, allowing it to carry a variety of air-to-air and air-to-surface missiles. Variable geometry. Besides having a more powerful engine than its predecessor, the MiG-23's most significant new feature was its variable sweep wing. Similar to the United States Air Force's F-111 Aardvark strategic bomber, the Flogger's wings could be changed in flight with 3 settings: 16, 45, and 72 degrees. When fully spread, the aircraft had a shorter takeoff and landing roll while carrying a heavier weapons load. However, when the wings were swept back, the MiG could achieve Mach 2.4 speeds. In addition, the cockpit was placed just aft of the aircraft's radar system to make way for the unique setting and all the machinery needed for the switches. Such a modification hindered the cockpit vision due to the raised fuselage spine and high-mounted wings, 2 of the most essential elements to make the variable wing setting possible. In 1967, thousands of Domo Dodovo airshow spectators were the first civilians to catch a glimpse of the new fighter aircraft, and the type entered operational service in 1971. Shortcomings. The Mach 2 capable MiG-23 became the first actual swing-wing fighter aircraft to serve with the Soviet Air Force. As a light, single-engine jet fighter that retained the agility of its predecessor, but with improved avionics and handling, greater range, an expanded armament suite, and more targeting capabilities, the Flogger seemed poised for battlefield success against the West. The versatile MiG-23 served as a fighter interceptor with a secondary ground attack capability. Still, instead of building the world's best dogfighter, the results left much to be desired once the aircraft entered service. When compared to swing-wing F-111, the MiG-23 was slower, had a lower range, and only 40% of the fuel capacity of the Aardvark. The fighter was also prone to instability issues at a high angle of attack, and many test pilots complained of yaw instability while at higher speeds, as well as landing issues during poor weather conditions. In addition to being challenging to fly and operate, the aircraft also suffered from many technical failures, including an R-29 engine with a short lifespan that tended to overheat, a flawed tank system, and many others. According to several experts, the MiG-23 was definitely not a worthy successor to the MiG-21. Flogger frenzy. As the only production swing-wing fighter in the Soviet arsenal, the MiG-23 generated plenty of interest from the nation's allies and supporters. Still, the mysterious Russians were not going to casually reveal their best-kept engineering secrets for public consumption. Consequently, several simplified versions of the MiG-23 were developed for the sole purpose of export. While Warsaw Pact nations were generally given a slightly revised version of the base Flogger, Third World customers were given far more downgraded forms featuring a rudimentary radar. Still, sales proved a great success. Thousands of MiG-23 were exported to dozens of foreign operators, including Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Côte d'Ivoire, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Romania, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, North Korea, Zimbabwe, and many Middle Eastern nations. Out of all the foreign owners, Cuba was of particular note, as its proximity to the continental United States and the MiG-23's range would allow a missile to easily reach Florida. Because of all the exports, the MiG-23 took part in many conflicts around the world. However, the feedback was mostly negative towards the Russians, especially when the model went up against American designs. In addition, the fighter performed abysmally during the 1970s and 1980s in Syrian, Iraqi, and Libyan services. And yet, as a relatively affordable aircraft with a price tag between $3 and $6 million, the Flogger was still somewhat reliable for other uses. While flawed, the Flogger became the Soviet Union's combat jet par excellence. Variants. The basis of the Flogger's design, model YE-231, was further enhanced by a slew of upgrades and modifications during its lengthy production run. Going forward, the MiG-23 spawned a large family with almost 24 variations, including the MiG-23 BN fighter bomber, the Flogger B standard interceptor, the Flogger C two-seater, and the Flogger G improved interceptor. Other unfinished variants that never went into production include a reconnaissance variant and a carrier-borne fighter. Still, the most advanced version of the Flogger was the MiG-23 MLD, and it featured a different identification friend or foe system, advanced missile capability, and a distinctive notch in the wing's leading edge meant to improve flight characteristics. Despite their issues with the MiG-23, the Mikoyan Design Bureau still went ahead with the MiG-27, a ground attack version of the Flogger. Featuring a distinct sloped-down nose to improve the visibility hindered by the swing-wing setup, the MiG-27, also known as the Flogger DJ, had a much less complicated engine, improved jamming, and radio navigation systems. The type's pièce de résistance was a 30mm GSH 630 cannon, complete with increased armor plating at essential points. Several experts claimed that the cannon was so powerful and shook the aircraft so deeply when fired that it often damaged its own structure and avionics. On some occasions, during its many air campaigns, the weapon meant to take down the enemy often took down the ground attack aircraft itself. Still, the modified Flogger served with Russia until the 1990s, as well as with other air forces, including Sri Lanka and India, where it was known as the Bahadur, or Valiant. Early retirement. The MiG-23's record of failure was so thorough and consistent that the model went down in history with the dubious distinction of facing retirement earlier than the MiG-21 jet fighter it was originally intended to replace. As the Soviet Union collapsed in the early 1990s, more than 1,500 MiG-23s of different variants were in service with the Russian armed forces, and more than 5,000 MiG-23s had been built in total. In the following years, with the new Russian Air Force being forced to cut back its fighter force, the nation's top brass decided that the single-engined MiG-23s and MiG-27s were to be retired and relegated to operational storage. Thus, the last model to serve was the MiG-23P air defense variant, which was retired from frontline service in May of 1998. Ultimately, the MiG-23 was one of the most produced and successful aircraft of the Cold War. According to some accounts, over 11,000 MiG-23 aircraft were operated by the air forces of other countries. Also, some Flagger airframe and weapon systems remained in service with former Soviet partners up to 2015, including with several Asian and African air forces, as well as in Syria and Cuba. Verdict. For a good part of the 1970s and 1980s, the MiG-23 was the most important Soviet fighter, made all the more potent by the type's ability to carry nuclear-tipped weapons at the height of the Cold War. Still, according to many Western observers, the model is the worst Soviet fighter in history, referring to it as merely serviceable during its lengthy operational service all over the world. To this day, the MiG-23 Flagger has a place in military aviation history as a reminder that even the soundest and most modern design concepts can be tarnished by subpar execution, and the Flagger continues to be overshadowed by more successful predecessor and successor MiG aircraft. Thank you for watching Dark Skies. Don't forget to hit the like button before you go, and share this video with someone you think might like it. Also, for more historical and military-inspired content, subscribe to all our Dark Documentaries channels, and stay tuned.